rounding out our workshop portion is Mike Rodell, Global Business Development Manager from Ncam, pardon me. Again, we're a production partner of Ncam, super excited. And obviously for this conference and everything in terms of virtual studios, we're using their camera tracking technology. But obviously we'll let Mike get into more details as to how that works. So Mike, thanks for joining us. Glad you can be here.
No problem, Frederick. Just checking you guys can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, loud and clear.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So obviously one thing I was just going to mention is you see the kind of cool Ncam logo up here. To get that the right way around.
Yeah, it looks great.
I had to flip my screen horizontally, so I'm not sure if when I show you my slides, they will also be flipped. Okay. In which case, I'll turn off the virtual background and you can see my my spare room in all its glory.
Wonderful.
Okay, so yeah, first, obviously, thanks a lot to Frederick and the team at NewWeb for arranging this event. It's always cool to get in contact with new people to explain kind of some of the technology solutions that we offer. And of course, you know, things around the world these days are very different ways of working, different ways of doing business, and of course, different ways of producing content. So what I wanted to do for you guys today is I'm going to quickly share my screen. And hopefully you can see my slides. Somebody shout if they're back to front. No, okay. Carry on.
So you're good to go.
I'm good to go. Excellent. Technology's not let me down. So yeah, I was really kind of pleased to see some of the examples of different virtual studio and augmented reality techniques that Onar was explaining from the zero density perspective. And obviously, you know, a lot of those kind of rely on camera tracking technologies. I'm not sure which of those, if any, was used with Ncam, but you kind of get the theory. Once you have camera tracking technology, that's the kind of thing that you can achieve. So what I wanted to do today was to quickly give you guys a bit of background on Ncam, our history, the markets we work across, some of our customers, etc. Then talk a little bit about, you know, what is camera tracking, why we need it, and then of course how Ncam kind of delivers that, and a little bit, of course, about how we believe we're different and better than some of the competition that are out there. And then hopefully any Q&A, we can come on to that at the end. And I also have a kind of a short video that I can show you just to show you some of the things we've been working on previously. So here is, if you like, the kind of the potted history of Ncam, right back from when we were founded in 2012, right up to the present day. So Ncam was founded back in 2012 by our CEO and founder, Nick Hatch. So Nick was working as a VFX artist, you know, on some kind of pretty big budget movie productions, and the need kind of arose for real-time camera tracking for on-set live pre-visualization. Obviously, previs, when you're working on green screen, blue screen, etc., lets the talent, the actors, the DOPs, the camera crew, the lighting crew pre-visualize the final CG composite live there on the set, which obviously speeds up the production process, saves time in post-production, and of course, when you're working on big budget movies, time in post-production is also big money. So that's really where Ncam started out back there. We moved pretty quickly across into the live broadcast, into the TV arena, as kind of broadcasters kind of took advantage of the improved render technology, alongside techniques like camera tracking, in order to enable all sorts of things, from, you know, virtual cars driving through the pit lane at motor racing to explain the mechanics of the car, all the way through to those kind of tied to pitch graphics that we're all familiar with today. But Fox Sports for us in the US was one of the pioneers using Ncam for that kind of technique. And we were really pleased that Fox also adopted us for use on the Super Bowl in 2014. I'm pleased to say that we've been used by both Fox and CBS on every Super Bowl since then. And of course, that's a really kind of cool project for us to be involved with. And they kind of push us to deliver new things for every Super Bowl, obviously, as Fox and CBS try to kind of outdo each other every time. Across in Europe, BT Sport on their UEFA Champions League coverage, that was one of our first big ones, where they use us in what is the biggest TV studio in Europe to kind of, you know, to display those augmented graphics of Europe and demonstrate how the teams are playing. That started out in 2015 and is still kind of live today. I'm not going to talk about all these, but just to pick out a couple. Obviously, companies like Ford, Apple, Microsoft, we've done a lot of commercial work with those guys, not only in terms of product presentations, but in terms of, you know, the CEO's keynotes, that kind of thing. I call out our work with Fortnite there back in 2019. So we were used for tracking 3 cameras on the Fortnite World Cup, and esports and live events generally is a huge kind of evolving market for us, or it was before the pandemic. We're hoping to kind of get back in that space. And then finally, right up to date there, in 2020, actually just about this time last year, we launched our new Mark II camera tracking product, which is what I'm going to talk a little bit more about in the next few minutes. Now just onto a kind of a quick skim through the vertical markets, so the sectors we work in and who some of our key customers are. As I mentioned there, film is really where Ncam started. I like to say born in film, grew up in broadcast. And you can see there kind of titles, everything from, you know, the Marvel Avengers titles, Harry Potter, Star Wars, but not only the movies, but also some of the really high-end episodics. So things like Game of Thrones, Outlander, that kind of thing. So as you can see, you know, that's just a tiny selection of the titles. But excuse me, you can see there that obviously some of the, you know, the biggest projects out there in the world with the highest production values, they trust us day in, day out to deliver camera tracking in real time, live on the set for them. When we move across into the broadcast space, you can see it's highly skewed towards sport, although we are used across, you know, quite a number of news and entertainment channels globally. But we found generally that sport tend to be the early adopters of new technology. And you can see there some of the big names, but really just to highlight that that's really across all continents. So people like, you know, CBS, Fox, CNN in the US, BT Sport and Sky Sport across Europe, people like CCTV and Tencent over in China, and then of course, you know, people like TV Globo down there in South America. The third real sector for us is what we call everything else, live events and special projects. So I've kind of mentioned some of the work on Fortnite World Cup and other esports titles. I don't know if anyone remembers the Star Wars premiere after party from The Rise of Skywalker and the kind of celebrities walking down the red carpet, dancing with virtual stormtroopers. That was Ncam camera tracking there. And the Super Bowl, we always call that a special project because that's never going to be a day-to-day run-of-the-mill broadcast project. So I mentioned that, you know, each time Fox and CBS push us for the latest innovations, two of the key ones to call out there is, you know, the Super Bowl was the first time camera tracking was used live on a wire cam above the stadium. And then slightly more recently, it was the first time camera tracking was used wireless on a Steadicam, which was running the touchline at the Super Bowl. So again, really, really cool to be involved with that as a project. So kind of back to the fundamentals, the what and why of camera tracking. Obviously, you know, you've seen examples throughout the day of what can be achieved, but the fundamental of what we provide, you know, we provide the tracking data into the render engine so that they can render the graphics in the correct position, orientation, scale, and, you know, depth of field if that's the option that you need to use. So our solution really gives real-time position and orientation in 3D space through hybrid camera tracking, hybrid methods of gathering that data, which I'll come back to, I think, on the next slide. So what we're providing is the camera view, the frustum, and the depth of field, the focus information. We're providing the lens distortion and in some cases shading data, because no matter what the lens manufacturers will tell you, every lens is slightly different, does have a slightly different distortion profile, particularly, for example, if you're using lenses which have been dismantled for service many times, they're going to be a lot less linear across the zoom and focus range. So an accurate lens distortion map is really, really important. And I guess kind of key to the conversation today is the kind of really advanced integration we have with the Unreal Engine. So we have a plugin that we've produced called the AR Suite, and that's a really cool piece of software. And we give customers a lot of flexibility with that because it's available in 2 flavors. So if you go on the Epic Marketplace today, search for Ncam, you'll find AR Suite Lite, which is freely downloadable, free to use, quite a powerful tool. And it's completely open source, so that's completely extensible for the end user's design. And what that light version of the product does is that gets you the ability to take all of our camera tracking data live in real time into those core kind of Unreal frameworks. So that gets you the basics. You know where the camera is, what the camera can see. You can do the timecode sync. You have the hardware support. You can do the compositing and keying. So that's the basics. The assumption there is with the light product, the end user has the ability to develop those blueprints on top of those frameworks. If you don't have either the ability, the time, or the inclination to develop those blueprints yourself, the full version of that software comes along with the full kind of production-ready stack of blueprints that we've developed ourselves. That gives you access to for example, it's really all the features, which is the reason you use Unreal. So the photorealistic effects, the lighting, the reflections, the shadows, the lens flare and bloom, all of those kind of things. That is why, rendering through Unreal really makes the end product stand out. So that's how we provide kind of integration at a simple level into Unreal. And of course, something else that that we're often used for is also the ability to record and export tracking data for use in post-production. So today we provide our point cloud for positioning the camera as an FBX file for export, which can be used, to feed into your match move software in your post-production pipeline. I can't talk too much about the future of that, but we definitely recognize, the importance and the interest from the market in having this data to use in post-production. So we've got some pretty exciting announcements coming up later this year in that space. So really the key use cases, which kind of should be pretty self-evident by now, in terms of film, so effectively anything that isn't going live to TV, live to streaming. This is for camera tracking for XR stages. So in order to drive the camera frustum in the perspective of the video that's projected in your LED stage, for example. And of course, it has use both in pre-production, live on set for pre-viz, and of course, as I've mentioned there, for post-viz, even using that pre-recorded tracking data. On the live production front, more around broadcast and events, this can be used for everything from presenting AR objects foreground, as you've seen in some of the previous examples today, for driving background virtual elements, so green screens, LEDs, or a hybrid of the two. I mean, as you saw in one of those examples from Onar previously, kind of a very small constrained space where you have a real physical set, but then using green screen elements off the side to do what we kind of loosely refer to as set extensions. But one of the unique powers of Ncam in the live broadcast space is our ability to work unrestricted in any location, indoors, outdoors. I mean, I was kind of amazed a couple of days ago when a client working over in Northern Europe sent me an example of Ncam being used for camera tracking on a skiing event out on ski slopes, where pretty much the entire video frame was just snow. And it just kind of blew my mind that our system was able to pick up anything to track from in that space. So yeah, I'm going to look into a bit further how they actually achieved that, because that was really cool. So here's just a quick rundown of what makes Ncam special, and if you like, what differentiates us a bit from some of the competition. So the majority of our competition will rely on a single source of tracking data. So the way we work at Ncam is there's kind of, if you like, three basic types of tracking information that we combine together. Our system works with a pair of very wide angle stereoscopic video lenses, which are looking out into the environment, and they're looking for fixed points of contrast. So corners, edges, geometry, any object that isn't moving, we can see that from two lenses. So that gives us a fixed point in 3D space. In a typical setup, we'll see many hundreds of those points. So that gives us what we call the 3D point cloud, which gives us the absolute position of the camera. Now we combine that with IMU data, so gyros, magnetometers, accelerometers, etc., which gives us relative position, helps us predict the track, helps us improve accuracy. And in case, I don't know, for example, one of our video cameras gets a strobe pointed down the lens, blinds it for a second, the IMU data lets us kind of predict where we're moving around. The point about real time for us is really important and major differentiator. So a lot of our competition rely on learning their environment or being calibrated to work in a space. We can work with no external markers at all. We actually produce our tracking data stream round about, depending on how you're working, 600 to 700 frames a second. And that means that, say your video camera is working 50 frames a second, for example, we can always guarantee to give you the position faster than the camera produces the video frame. So that means that literally you switch our system on, within a second, it's generated a point cloud. It builds that point cloud in real time as you move around the studio space. So that's a real key one for us. I think there I've also touched on the second point, that fusion of absolute and relative positional data. But importantly, what I mentioned here is we're obviously, as well as where the camera is, we need to understand what the camera can see. So we also read in the focus, iris, and zoom data so that we can see the camera's field of view and kind of simulate depth of field. Another cool point about particularly our new system compared to our old system is that because of the smaller and much lighter footprint than the competition, we can be mounted really, really simply with standard screw thread components to any camera rig. I'll definitely guarantee Steadicam, handheld jib, Technocrane, and Spidercam. Drones is something that is still a little bit experimental. It's not the tracking that's the problem there, it's the wireless connection, but drones is something that we're kind of hoping to announce is 100% done pretty soon. Ultra fast tracking initialization, speed of operation is obviously something that that customers ask us for all the time. Because of, as I've mentioned, no need to learn the space, that's something that we can definitely offer. All of that kind of combined together means that we believe we can work without limits, no environmental limitations, indoors, outdoors, some pretty bizarre spaces. I'll show you a video of a few of those when I come to the end of this. And even in some pretty crazy lighting conditions. So, strobes, smoke, pyrotechnics, heavy LED volumes, all of that kind of thing. And the final point, I guess, maybe the most important point, is that we understand that camera tracking is one small component of, the overall virtual production, XR, AR, whatever you want to call it, production pipeline. So we know that we need to be kind of pretty technology agnostic and work with anyone, whether that's the provider of the render platform, the provider of the LED volume, the provider of the lighting controllers, the media servers, all of that kind of thing. So we've developed, a bunch of really, really deep relationships with key partners of ours in the technology space. And I think that's a real important factor to consider for customers. So a lot of what I've just spoken about also applied to the old system, the Mark I, which has been around since 2012. So why did we feel the need to, invest blood, sweat, and tears, time and money into developing the Mark II product? So one thing we're also really keen to do at Ncam is a constant dialogue with not only existing customers, but potential customers as well, to talk about where they're at today, what the problems are, where they need to be in the future, and obviously, what we can do to help them along that path. So in that kind of constant dialogue, these kind of 6 key points are what kept coming out right on top, and this really is what has driven our development. So creative freedom, let's put that one right at the top, of course, because that's why we're all here. So what we want the technology to do is be a crucial but transparent and invisible part of the pipeline, giving creative and editorial freedom, for the production team to enable what they want to do, not limit what they want to do, and that's crucial to everything we do. Simplicity, again, people have asked us for faster, more accurate setup and calibration. We've taken a bit of criticism in the past that our software was possibly designed by engineers for engineers. I'm sure that's a criticism common to a lot of technology in this space. So what we've done with the new system is we're in the process of moving features one by one into this much simpler to operate web user interface. Today, that's just kind of some of the basic day-to-day functions, but over time we'll be using more of the, if you like, the engineering functions into that interface instead. The objective there is to reduce the requirement for specialist operators. Maybe on the first day of your shoot, you need the expert there to do the setup and calibration, but if that set isn't changing very much across several days of a shoot, our vision kind of is that the camera guy can just switch the system on, connect to the web interface with his cell phone, which is keyed out so you can't see my cell phone, magic. Check all the lights are green, press go. It should be that simple. Reliability, of course, is another crucial factor people are asking us for. Not only reliability of the data stream itself, which I think I've covered, but also with the physical ruggedness of the sensor, because as we all know, equipment can take quite a battering when you're out there on location. Cost effectiveness has always been key, maybe more so today than in previous years. So what we've done really, in rough terms, we've taken a 0 off the price tag of where we used to be priced. We've vastly simplified the model. So rather than have 4 different tiers of product with different features depending on what the customer wants, we now have a single tier of product that does pretty much everything. But to kind of give the customers, still give them the flexibility, we give them the option to subscribe to the software on annual, monthly, weekly, and potentially even a daily basis. So you can have the low-cost hardware sitting there on the shelf, and you can just subscribe to the software for the days, weeks, or months that your shoot is happening. And flexibility, flexibility means a number of things. I've already covered we can work on any camera in any space, but I think the other kind of interesting thing about flexibility is just how quick it is to move our system between an outdoor shoot, an indoor studio, and back again. Just a matter of a few minutes with no lengthy kind of setup processes, giving kind of customers additional flexibility there as well. And I'd just like to finish off with it with a kind of couple of product shots, because yeah, I'll probably get shot if I don't. So obviously there on the left, you see the system as delivered, all fits in a kind of airline friendly hand luggage case. On the right there, you'll see an additional option that we have today sitting underneath the sensor bar. And this is, we've added the ability with the new system to track infrared markers as well as those natural features. So that's of real benefit, you know, in those difficult lighting situations, LED heavy environments, changing light, pyrotechnics, again, that kind of thing. So infrared is a cool option. And there you have the kind of, you know, the kind of size comparison overview just for reference. We've knocked over 1 kilo off the weight of the system. And if you look at that typical rig on the right there, which is a nice Fuji Cabrio lens on a Sony f55, the old system would have added around 1.3 kilos to the rods underneath the lens. Obviously, your camera rig is already pretty front heavy with that big piece of glass there. So balance being important if you're operating, you know, on a handheld Steadicam, jib, Spidercam, for example. So the ability to lose 1 kilo of weight from the front of that and simply mount the new sub 300 gram bar wherever, you know, wherever you have a screw thread available is a real benefit. So kind of that's the kind of the end of the presentation, everyone. What I wanted to do with was just kind of finish off with, let me find the showreel, which has appeared on the wrong screen, as things do these days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn down the music and just talk this through. So to explain, this is just a really kind of quick overview of some of the different environments, different types of productions we've been used on across the years. Unfortunately, our updated showreel in 2020, the production of that kind of got put on the back burner, but hopefully this will give you a pretty good overview of some of the things we've done. The first one is the kind of typical use case where we started out. This was Independence Day for Fox back in 2012. Obviously, you know, the blue screen and the real-time composite there, allowing the camera crew, the DOP, and the actors to pre-visualize the composite, allowing, I guess, natural reactions, allowing them to react on scene. This is a slightly different example, similar concept, but they're effectively using the previs on set, rewind slightly, to allow the guys the ability to kind of tweak those digital assets on set. Again, obviously saving
Hey, Mike,
time.
sorry to interrupt. I'm seeing just your presentation here. I'm not seeing any videos or images.
Sorry, Frederick. I have shared a window, not a screen, haven't I? Give me 1 minute to rerun that.
No problem.
Hey, the best laid plans, you know. Let me reset. And you know, when you're working with 5 screens on your desktop, it's things always appear where you don't expect them.
Of course.
Okay, let's try this.
And it's past pub o'clock in London, so I appreciate you taking the time to join us here.
Hey, no problem. Can you see this now?
Yeah, looks great.
Great. So here's the Independence Day example I just described. Obviously, you know, compositing in real time for previs on set, so the crew can see exactly what's going on, saving them time, making the shoot more efficient, saving them money at the end of the day. The next one is a kind of similar example, but here they're kind of taking advantage of that previs to enable them to tweak and build digital assets there live on set as they're continuing with the production. This is a broadcast example. I mean, we've been used on the Formula E motor racing championship around the world for a number of years now. You'll see there, kind of in the center of the screen, this activation zone. Those graphics are being composited live on the track in real time from 2 cameras, one high up on a crane, one down beside the track. For some reason, they let this run for ages in the edit, so I'll wind forward slightly. This next one is a great one. So this is an esports example, the eWorld Cup in London back in 2019. Really challenging environment for optical tracking. So we switched to infrared, which of course let us cope with those pyrotechnics and the lack of natural light in the space. This is a proof of concept for a Chinese client a couple of years back, where the actor could move around the virtual assets. As I say, proof of concept. Again, the Fortnite World Cup. Don't ask me what Fortnite's all about. You know, go and talk to your kids about that. But again, a really challenging space for an optical tracking system. So we used a combination actually of optical and infrared in this space to cope with those moving lights, to cope with the heavy LED walls, and to cope with the fact that every now and then all the lights will go down and then all come back up again. So a combination of techniques is really what gives us the flexibility. Here's the product launches we did with Ford back at the Detroit Motor Show, obviously allowing real-time CG to be composited over the cars to explain some of the the mechanical features. And I'll finish off with a dragon as well, same as the previous presentation. This was some of our friends out in Korea who also have a bit of an obsession with dragons, flying around the baseball stadium and demolishing the screen. So not something we see a lot of in the European market. I'm not sure about over that side of the Atlantic, but it's a bit of fun. So I hope that's been useful, guys.
Yeah, no, that's been great. It's one of those things that I have just one question, but obviously we're partners with you guys. We love using your products, and I think there's a few points that you touched on that we're really the difference makers for us. Ultimately, the ability to work with any camera and just be flexible is amazing. The fact that you can shoot outside without markers, I think that for us is just key, right? It just gives us that flexibility to adapt to different situations, which is always exciting. And then I think money is always of concern, right? Everybody's looking at the bottom line. Understanding that there is a customized subscription model also, so you don't need to be pumping out the product every day of the month to get your money's worth. Be able to do it basically it's use on demand. I think that's awesome, and something that we definitely love.
To be honest, the only reason we haven't yet rolled out the kind of daily subscriptions is that today the way the subscription works is you email one of our guys, he generates a code, emails it back to you. If he was having to do that for hundreds of customers daily, that would become a bit of a nightmare. So what we're going to be rolling out in the near future is almost a web portal. You give us the serial number of your machine, you tell us how many days you want, you put your credit card number in, there's your license.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that's great. And I guess one question I do have to ask you is to understand, based on your experience, are you seeing kind of an uptake in television clients? Obviously, these are the types of things where we see, used for big movies. You're talking about Independence Day. You did talk about the Super Bowl also, which I think in terms of television world is not necessarily what we, accessible, let's say, to everybody. But how are you seeing that kind of move along and change just from the cinema to more television?
Definitely. I think the same applies to both cinema and TV, is what we found in kind of, well, there's two things. This was happening already, right? So the fact that the systems, the technology across the board, not just Ncam, is becoming more accessible. So easy to use, easy to understand, and lower cost. That's driving it away from just the top end productions. So, it's not just the Super Bowl, it's not just the main national news at 10 o'clock or whatever you guys have over there, but it's now accessible to the local news channels, the local sports stations, the regional affiliates, that kind of thing. And those guys, obviously, they don't have the huge budgets. So as well as the cost base, they also probably don't have the depth of, expertise in terms of operations. So that's where the simplicity of operation kind of becomes true. And then what we found kind of when the pandemic came along is obviously, live sports kind of pretty much stopped. The live events industry pretty much stopped. But there was an awful lot of really clever, talented guys stuck at home with time on their hands. And everyone heard the buzzword virtual production. We've got to do that. So that's been cool for us. There's been a great deal of uptake. But I guess the flip side of that for us is that, those smaller clients, those people who are new to the business, new to the industry, they've probably just, seen the Mandalorian videos, seen that was done VP on an LED stage and said, that's cool, that's easy, I can do that. So those guys need a lot more kind of support and education than our typical top tier clients. But that's something that we're kind of adapting to that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's again the purpose of this discussion today, right? It's really based on education and at the same time showing that it is accessible, something we're really excited about. And then on our side, again, as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, our role here and the way we position ourselves at NewWeb is really to be that added value to creative and production teams who did, potentially see Avatar or Mandalorian and want to take on virtual production, but don't necessarily know the steps or how to go about it. So again, partnering with you guys as well as Zero Density, it's something we're really excited to be able to offer to the different teams.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. And kind of the partnership that we have with yourselves at NewWeb and you know, other partners around the globe has always been important to us. But I think, you know, the other kind of thing that's been thrown out by the pandemic when we've been unable to travel is that having a trusted partnership with people like yourselves overseas to support the sales, to support the customers, to help with the demonstrations, that kind of thing, is even more important than ever.
Yeah, wonderful. And again, one thing that's great about it is truly is a partnership where, you know, we're working with you guys, as you said, we're kind of your eyes and ears on site. You guys are, you know, feeding us the updates, what the new technology can do, doing a lot of the R&D. And then at the same time, really, you know, working together to bring the best product to the clients. So something we're definitely proud of. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all, Frederick. And thanks again for the opportunity to talk to everyone.
Awesome. Well, cheers. I'll let you get back to your evening. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely be in touch shortly.
Ah, it doesn't key glass, this thing.
No.
We need the zero density key.
There
Great.
you go.
Have a good evening.
Enjoy. Take care. Thank you.